I want to talk about Hong Kong. I've been following what has been taking place in Hong Kong, almost like a rainbow revolution or something like the thing that was in Ukraine. It's always interesting to me that the media pays a lot of attention to what is going on in places like the Ukraine and Hong Kong, but we never see what takes place in Paris. And they have been protesting in Paris for the last, 8 months or so? This is Hong Kong. Don't quote that number, by the way. They said 1.7 million, but I don't know if that estimate is true. That is a lot of people. That is a lot of people. And this is after China has threatened to send military to put this down. I got to be honest, I don't think your military can put this down. At least not without a lot of bloodshed. That is astonishing. We're talking about a little island. Now, they call themselves pro-democracy demonstrators. A few things we need to know. Hong Kong was taken, and I've said this on more than one occasion because I've done these videos multiple times, was taken by the Brits in retaliation for China rebelling against them selling opium to China. It's astonishing. Like, when you look at this, China looks at this with great embarrassment. Why? Because this is a memory. This is a reminder, an experiential, living reminder of a time where they couldn't defend themselves and they couldn't maintain their own homeland. Thanks, Brits. This country went under British rule, British control. China couldn't do anything about it. They couldn't defend themselves at the time. They weren't strong enough. They're strong enough now. By the same token, from the standpoint of the United States, who's in a trade war with China, Hong Kong is just another venue for that trade war. I was fascinated by mainstream media who kind of went with this notion that Trump is disengaged from this process. Trump is disengaged from this process, while simultaneously showing images like this. Look at this. This is Hong Kong. They're holding the American flag. This is a journalist trying to get a good shot of that American flag, so, there's that. But it goes beyond that. I've shown multiple images with these guys holding the flag, singing the Star-Spangled Banner. And they were showing that at the exact same time that they said Donald Trump is completely disengaged from this process. As if the people holding the American flag are doing it willy-nilly and for no reason. If you are mainstream media, at the very least, you should ask two basic questions. Why are they holding the American flag? And is it possible there's clandestine operations in that country? Clandestine operations in that country where that holding of the American flag is trying to send a message. They don't ask those questions. They don't ask those questions. I want to show you something else. I've shown this before, so forgive me if you're an avid viewer and you've seen this image before. But right here. Hong Kong. And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting through the parallel. That's extraordinarily inspiring, seeing this coming from my colony in Hong Kong. Hong Kong, that technically belongs to China. That's extraordinary. That's extraordinary. That's extraordinary. Mainstream media showed that image. And then literally said, Trump's leadership is missing in the world. Now, take out right or wrong. Take out what you want, what you don't want. Take out your ideology, put all this stuff to the side. Just action, consequence, and history. Technically, Hong Kong is China's. Technically, Hong Kong was taken from China in retaliation for the Brits not being able to sell their drugs to China that did not want those drugs. Hong Kong is pushing now for a certain democracy movement. I've argued on more than one occasion that when people get together and they start feeling themselves, the requests and the things that they want escalate. It started off as, we don't want to be extradited over to China. It turned into, and I'm telling you it's going to turn into, liberation and statehood. Not statehood, I'm sorry. Well, statehood in the sense of being an independent nation. Whether or not Hong Kong can support itself is secondary to the want. Those things are secondary. Those protests, that 1.7 million people estimate, eventually will turn into, we want to be our own thing. We do not want to be technically under the thumb of China. In 50 years, 40-some years now, 40-something years now, there's technically, that two-system thing is supposed to break down. Right now, two systems, one country. They are flipping out. They're flipping out. The two-system thing has not broken down yet. And you have people in China who are hardliners who are like, those people need to get their shit together because at some point you're going to belong to us. It makes no sense, this protest, if it does not escalate to, we want statehood. Otherwise, in 40 years, you are going to be given over to China. And you're flipping out about a bill that would allow extradition. I hope you get my point. The protest doesn't really make sense if the protest doesn't go towards this thing of independence. That's my point. It will escalate to that, even though it might not be there yet. I want to show you something else. This is an image you would never see on mainstream media. China outed this woman. This woman is a U.S. diplomat. That woman, U.S. diplomat, is meeting with members of the protests, of the pro-democracy group, the leaders of it. After meeting with this woman, the protests got more violent. Got a lot more violent. And not just more violent. Look at this. This is a police station. The thing that represents law and order set on fire. And again, is it possible, to any degree that's possible, that Trump is not disengaged, that CIA operations have been given to NGOs, which is true, by the way. That's true. You dump money into a particular state, country, into opposition groups that are going against people who you dislike. And in dumping money into those opposition groups, you can affect your will without necessarily having a presence in a sense of direct action. In this case, is it possible, to any degree that's possible, that they are not singing the Pledge of Allegiance for shits and giggles? That this is indeed a statement that goes just beyond these guys wanting American intervention into this area? Is it possible that the intervention is already taking place in a clandestine way? Seeing as these guys were meeting the representative from America, I think that may be true. So why does the mainstream media tell the public that? Why don't they say that? The goal of this is 1, humiliation, 2, sever Hong Kong from China. That's America's objective. America's objective is accomplished in 2 ways, however. If China puts a military presence in Hong Kong, so what? We don't care. If America doesn't do that, in Hong Kong, these protests get more aggressive and these protests escalate to this notion of independence. Again, it's a win-win for us. The goal is just humiliation of China. That works either way, with varying degrees of greater success, like gravy on top, depending on what takes place. China knows this and has come out saying, essentially calls it the black hand. That's what they called it. And their point is, stay out of our affairs. Stay out of our affairs. They were very explicit about this. Stop interacting in our affairs. They're not unclear on this. And by the way, I keep making this point. In Afghanistan, when the Soviet troops went into Afghanistan, the world looks at this and says, oh my God, I can't believe they're doing this. And the reality of it is, there were clandestine operations going on in Afghanistan that the Soviets knew about. They weren't unclear that there were clandestine operations. Their response to that was heavy-handed, and the heavy-handed response worked against their interests. From America's standpoint, America looked at that and said that was a success. We bragged about that, by the way. It's like, yes! We got them to invest their forces into a Vietnam-like situation. Yes! Public policy, foreign policy. Now, those same troops that we radicalized, of course, ended up being Al-Qaeda and members of Al-Qaeda that eventually hit us on 9/11 and some of these other various ways. So, yes, a policy success for 10 years, and then after that, blowback. History doesn't stop, right? Well, I'm making the point that the same thing is somewhat true here. The goal of this is policy embarrassment and to get an investment of Chinese might into this country potentially, or at the very least sever Hong Kong from China. Both of those are just punitive measures for China trying to take the crown. For them trying to take the crown. We'll see. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think I'm right. I think I'm dead on. Now, there's something else I wanted to show with this. Oh, the reason I say take right, wrong, all that stuff out of it is because in an ideological sense, you have hawks, the Clintonites of the world, who love this. They salivate over this. They're like, yes, rip it away, rip it away. And in their mind, they like this notion of the U.S. somehow, for some reason, doing something, being involved, and something that literally has nothing at all to do with the United States. I mean, maybe Britain can make an argument for involvement. What the hell does the United States have to do with what takes place in China? Nothing. Nothing. That said, all countries, over the entire course of history, have involved themselves in other countries' affairs. And all groups, within the context of countries, seek out additional assistance outside of themselves for that help. The American Revolution, for example, France didn't like Brits. So what did France do? France aided the Americans. We want to help you out. Same thing with Russia, the Russian Revolution. Germany throws Lenin back into Russia like a bomb in order to destabilize the Russian government. Was Lenin serious about his own political objectives? Yes. Was Lenin bothered by working in coordination with Germany to accomplish those objectives? No. He was not bothered in the least. As long as those objectives coincided, the world is good. And that's the way they looked at it. That's the way countries function. That's the way the countries act. When the United States looks to Iran for the MEK, this terrorist religious, cult of sorts, they're doing that because they're trying to get something within the country itself that they can dump a bunch of money into, where they wouldn't necessarily need to add inside effect. Meaning, that's their inside guy. That's their guy on the inside that works. Same thing with Venezuela. Guaido is their inside man. They can dump a bunch of money and everything else into Guaido. In this case, they were more heavy-handed in that particular approach. But in other approaches, they don't have to be overly heavy-handed. You work behind the scenes. As China calls it, the black hand. My point is twofold. I am stuck in this weird situation, right? When people become something distinct, and those people say we want to be distinct and we want our own thing, who am I to be against it? If it was me, who am I to be against it? So I guess my point is, the moment that this group becomes something else, and these guys say, look, there's a preponderance of people saying we want to be something else. We don't want to be handed over to China like a bag of meat. We want to be something else. Then I'm stuck in the situation of saying those people probably should be able to be allowed to be something else. By the same token, the people who are beside me saying that are a bunch of neocons. And like, yes, let's stick it to China by taking Hong Kong away. The problem here is the temperament, or my temperament, is dramatically different than theirs. Mine is not to stick it to China. Mine has everything to do with Hong Kong being able to, accentuate their notion of individuality. Theirs is more mean-spirited. And that's my issue with this particular topic. Like, it's not, I don't want to be on the side of pro-democracy in this. I don't want to be. Because the people who are on that side with me are fucking neocons. Like, if you look at the people who are saying, or who are pushing this, you have like Republicans, you have Democrats, you have all of these people like across the board, like, yes, but their yes is stick it to China. My goal is not to stick it to China. My goal is, if Hong Kong wants a certain degree of liberation, fair enough. By the same token, let's be very clear. The U.S. media decides what it wants to show and what it wants to emphasize versus not. You are seeing this because they want you to see this. Right now, the federal government is in opposition to China. We are in the middle of a trade war. Media tends to go in line with the federal government, especially on issues of foreign policy, meaning you will see this to the hilt on MSNBC, on CNN, on Fox News. What you want to see on those channels is a yellow vest movement. Even though that has been going on longer, and it is, and at times, been more intense. That's what you won't see. They're choosing. Why? Because they want to stick it to China. And Hong Kong is just a way of doing so. I hope you understand what I mean by this. And the reason why I said take right, wrong, good, bad, ideology, all that stuff out. The basic historical context is, we're thanks, Brits. Thanks, Britain. Like, I swear, man. Do you realize there are like 5 stories? And there's another story in Kashmir that I want to do or want to talk about. And many of these things have to do with Britain. World War I. World War I. This is going to evolve. That's going to evolve. It's going to evolve. Donald Smead, what do you want to bet a bunch of elderly are about to beat up these protesters? Totally not mainland undercover provocateurs in Hong Kong. That's interesting. That's interesting. And that's not... What do you... I'll go back to it. I'll explain what you're talking about. Data Stream. Hong Kong is a conduit for capital in and out of China. China would be stupid to let the U.S. get its hands on it. They are not. Hong Kong is... China is not letting Hong Kong go. China is not letting Hong Kong go at all. Like, any notion that Hong Kong is going to be taken is nonsense. By the same token, that doesn't mean that the protesters there. It's like if Texas decided it wanted to leave and China started to work with protesters in Texas and those protesters started to get more violent and take down airports. What would the response of the United States be? Do you think this shit would happen? Do you think that the U.S. would allow the torching of a police station in a major city? They would never allow that. That would never take place. And if it did take place, the consequences would be extreme. I guarantee you that. And the public will be okay with the consequences to some degree being extreme. I guess my point is, China is deploying capability to stop this. Some of that involves threats, meaning we will send our military to quell this rest. And some of it is economic. Trying to get people to lose their jobs if they find out there protesting, especially if they're getting violent in those protests. But I got to be honest, 1.7 million people is a lot of people. And whatever China is going to do, they better get to it. I had a conversation with a woman from China one day, and I was enamored at how naive she was about U.S. foreign policy. And I don't mean naive in a bad way. I mean, I know that it's a bad word, but it's meant not in a negative way. It's more so in a literal sense. Like, because in her mind, she's like, wait, so you believe that the United States is looking at this stuff as a zero-sum game? And they think China is going to look at the world in the same way? Yes, exactly. That's exactly what's taking place. You look at the world in a particular way, you assume that the world is going to look at the way the same. The U.S. is looking to maintain a dominance. Full stop. China is trying to take that dominance, especially in economic matters. The U.S. sees a contest to its crown. This has not gotten into military affairs, at least not yet, but this is more so economic. But don't get it twisted. The U.S. is trying to injure, or at the very least humiliate, China. And the way they're trying to do this is by instigating and assisting with what is taking place in Hong Kong. It's not that the U.S. overly cares about Hong Kong per se, it's more so that they care about dinging China. Insofar as the quote-unquote pro-democracy protesters and the U.S. interests fall into alignment, yeah, the U.S. will assist these guys. But the goal of it is not pro-democracy. The U.S. doesn't really care so much about democracy. It has to do with dinging China. They want to make China look bad. and if they can get China to invest its military or something like that in Hong Kong with a world outcry. And the fact of the matter is, any military investment in Hong Kong is only going to create a reverb effect, meaning it's not going to give the effect that they want. Sending military into Hong Kong is going to galvanize, at least based on historical precedents, the public to be against mainland China, not for it. Whatever China has to do here, it has to do it in clandestine ways to bring the temperature down. Military is not the answer. I'm just saying, it's true. The U.S. is trying to get its hands on Hong Kong. Not literally, but more so to carve it away from China. That's its objective. That's its goal. The protesters in Hong Kong, they individually, unbeknownst to anybody else, want independence. They will work with whatever group works with them to achieve those ends. If the person that they're meeting with from the U.S. is giving them logistics, money, advice, whatever, they're going to take it and they're going to say thank you. That sign, that flag, is an indication, is a message. It is not a no bullshit thing. They're not showing that U.S. flag for no reason. It's twofold. It can either be we want assistance or thank you for that assistance and here's the message being sent to China. For all we know, that woman who was talking to them, this could have been one of her requests. We want you to raise the flag. Send a message to China of what's taking place. I'm just saying. But you're right. They would be insane to allow it, and the U.S. would not allow it. The U.S. would never allow that. It would never allow that. Like, think Hawaii for the moment. Think of Hawaii. If China comes along and says, all right, we're going to assist Hawaii in a pro-independence movement, and you find representatives from China meeting with representatives who are head of that particular movement, what would they say? The United States has been screaming about a non-hack, screaming that a hack that didn't take place, from the same point of Russia, was equivalent to Pearl Harbor. We are literally helping these people in this. And again, these protests have gotten violent. So yeah. I mean, it's fascinating to watch. And again, I'm in a moral quandary on this one. And the moral quandary is not from... No, it's not a moral quandary. I'm clear on what I want. My issue is not so much what I support. It's who's supporting it with me. That's my issue. My thing is, look, man, at a certain point where people gain a certain degree of independence, you know, it's like going about to say, no, you must be under the thumb of a government that you don't want to be under the thumb of. And I guarantee you this, if the Chinese military goes in and do what they threatened to do, that independence movement will kick off the very next day. Whatever, on day 2, the independence movement will be in effect. I shit you not. China can threaten all it wants. Heavy-handed approaches oftentimes backfire. When Napoleon decided to take down the Spanish... fuck him. Let's do history. When Napoleon, at one point, Napoleon ran roughshod over Spain and Portugal, if I'm not mistaken. And he started using family members to... God, man. I'll get to the generalities because the specifics may be missing me. But he starts to run roughshod. He starts to put starts to overtly control Spain. And it goes to shit. Not just goes to shit. It gets into this kind of civil war where they're rebelling against him. And so he ends up having to come back in order to quell the unrest that takes place in Spain. But I want to my point is, that shit started to pop off when he started to exert overt control over the population. I'm saying adding in military in these situations like this can backfire. It reverberates. If China sends military here, day 2 will be independence. Mark my words for the sake of this video or this clip. I could be wrong, but these things evolve. They evolve. Well, we'll see. But yeah, China's not going to give up Hong Kong, at least not without major consequences. Donald Smead, how China handles this could sink or float the Belt Road Initiative. Yes, Donald Smead, you're right. Oh, and Belt Road Initiative. So just in case people don't know, China has engaged in this expansive program called the Belt Road Initiative. Now, it's essentially to Donald Smead. There's an idea, a notion, you might even want to call it philosophy, that says the person who controls Europe controls the world. Meaning, the person who controls this Eurasian landmass have always controlled essentially the world. Now, this is what it looks like. Do they have a bigger picture of this? I need a bigger picture, dog. I need a bigger picture. All right. And why are you not? I really hate their new look. It doesn't do anything for me. Motherfucker. I just want the picture. I just want the picture. Just give me the picture, dog. Give me the picture. There we are. All right, so the thought is whoever controls the front and the back end, or essentially this Eurasian landmass, controls the world. Right now, the United States, for the most part, are allies with all of these countries, mostly. And NATO members, of course, surround this particular area with a certain control of Europe. China, from the standpoint of economic development, is looking to connect all of this together. Coming all the way around Africa, back up to here, Belt and Road. And they've been dumping a ton of money into all of these various regions and cities and countries in order to make this work. Meaning they're creating a trade route and trade relationships with all of these countries. That's what Belt and Road is. So right here, Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, Indonesia, Kuala Lumpur, can't pronounce some of these names, Moscow, Germany, Greece, Djibouti, Kenya, Kolkata. And I can tell you this from personal experience. There are a lot of Chinese in Kenya. There are a lot of Chinese in Africa in general. And I remember reading the newspaper where they say, most Kenyans speak English because it was a British colony at one point. And they made this point of, they said, America gave us over to China. I was fascinated by that. Essentially, or the Western powers, but particularly America, gave us over to China. And the arguments that they were making was China has had so much investment in Africa that they've been able to, roughshod is the wrong word for it. They're getting a lot more influence in African affairs, let's say it that way. There were 3 casinos almost dedicated to Chinese in Kenya. And that's just in Kenya. That's just in the capital. That's just in Jesus Christ. Can't think of the name, but in Kenya. So yes, the Belt and Road thing is big, and the West is concerned, to say the least. I mean, the reason why you're getting this stuff like the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and all that stuff is stuff like that. And the reason why China is doing that is for stuff like the GPP. They know that the West is trying to crowd them out. They know it. These trade deals are in part trying to crowd them out. Obama's TPP was going to essentially exclude China and Russia from that trade deal. The Belt and Road Initiative is a way around that. And to be honest, you can even make an argument, a way of somewhat world domination in regards to economic affairs. China will be an economic juggernaut. The question is only when. They have every right to be. The U.S., you can make an argument, has every right to try to, I suppose, stop them. The question becomes how. I mean, it's one thing if you're doing that through competition, you just win in competition, but the U.S. has gone beyond competition. It's gone beyond competition. It's gone to browbeating neighbors to not use particular products, to castigate them as saying, oh, we don't like, to attack them outright in regards to trade policies. Oh, they're devaluing their currency. They're doing this, they're doing that. They're cheating. These horrible words that are used in regards to these guys. And yeah, it's going beyond trade because, again, we are involving ourselves in affairs that have nothing to do with us. And I put to you that all of this is to take a chunk out of China. I guarantee you. And Hong Kong is a focal point for it. So, whether they let them do it or not, I don't know. Jay Vell, going to be a lot of African Chinese babies coming. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. That Chinese man looking at us. Oh, that booty. Booty. Them thick African women. I was like, yeah. That's what's going to happen. There's going to be a lot of Chinese African babies. Yes, they are. What's that cat on, this is this is my show. We can fuck around at this point. This is patron appreciation. What's the show? The guy on, The Originals. So on The Originals, one of the lead characters, Marcel. I used to didn't like Marcel when that show started, but he grew on me. He's Asian and black. There's gonna be a lot of good-looking people coming out there, man. There's gonna be a lot of good people coming out of China. Gonna be a lot. Ironic, isn't it? Trump wants all the rubles, diamonds, minerals of Greenland, but global warming is a Chinese conspiracy. It is ironic. And very strange. Very strange that a person would ever say that. Look, we have, if you're talking about like oil and gas, those are Western nations. China has its coal plants, don't misunderstand me, and some of these developing nations are doing what they can. But you can understand the argument of the developing nations. This seems grossly unfair. You guys were able to develop to meet whatever needs you needed for your society. And now you're wagging your finger at us when we're trying to do the same. That's the point. Now, the other argument is, well, dude, the rules have changed. Climate change is creating somewhat of a problem. If that is true, then you need to give something back to those nations. It's only fair, right? You were able to get your full productive powers, not to mention you ran roughshod over those particular nations. And here's another point. If you did give something back to those nations with this notion of development of those various regions, they wouldn't be coming to your country. They wouldn't be fleeing and coming to your shores. They can be where they are.